Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is our third segment of 5 Steps to Become Globally Competitive, Scoping and Budgeting Phase. I'm your host for this afternoon, Nadia Bayer Thomas, Director of 800 Tech. And joining us this afternoon is our esteemed guest, Managing Director of Blue Networks Limited, Sheldon Paul. Sheldon has over 20 years experience in telecommunications, spanning many multi-sectors, from financial to entertainment to government and even education. Sheldon also has an expansive knowledge in network engineering, network communications, business continuity, and IT strategy. Welcome, Sheldon.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Schofield.
And also joining us this afternoon is our co-host, Schofield Thomas, Managing Director of 800 Tech.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so as we starting off another series, and the whole purpose of this is an educational drive where we are going to show you how easy it is to become competitive globally. So we started off the first session was where we did the strategic phase. And out of the strategic phase, I just want to link things back to you so that you have a comprehensive understanding of where we're going on this journey. So the week one was the strategic phase where we discuss future state and where we would like our company to be. Then we came to the second, week where we discussed planning, and how are we going to achieve this future state. And what we discovered is in the planning phase, we now have to look at where we at, which is the as-is state. And that as-is state will tell us, okay, where we are currently, compared to where we want to be. And then the area between where we are now and where we want to be, the future state compared to the current state, we have to do a roadmap to get to that point in time. So last week we discussed the roadmap and the details of that roadmap and what should be on that roadmap to get to that phase. And we had some really interesting questions coming out of that last week. Questions that we answered live, questions that we answered thereafter the live ended. And if I remember, one burning question was if I don't have enough budgets to complete that entire roadmap. And we answered and indicated that you can segment your roadmap based on your budgets. So this week is going to be a really nice interactive session again. Where we're going to be discussing roadmap, the budget, in relation to the roadmap that we discussed last week. And a key component, and may I say, an almost forgotten component of the roadmap is the spinal cord of all of this. Because in your body, if you don't have your spine, you're immobile, to a greater extent. And Sheldon has been an advocate for this part of the roadmap, which is the infrastructure, and he always reminds me in the conversations that we would have, that the infrastructure plays a critical role because it is the backbone of your entire transformational process, So Sheldon, we're really happy to have you on board. And I know you could share your knowledge with us. And this is an interactive session. So viewers online, feel free to ask your questions as we go along, because we are going to start discussing what infrastructural requirements would we have and should we factor for along this roadmap, because we always forget that part. We always think about, we need to get the apps, we need to get, the process flows, we need to get these things in place. What do they run on? They run on the infrastructure, So Sheldon, thank you for being here. And I know, this is an area all too familiar to you.
No problem. Thanks for having me again. And as you rightly said, Schofield, infrastructure at the end of the day, this is the road that all of this traffic or payload, as we call it in the networking space, runs on. The applications, all the strategy that you determine from the boardrooms and so on, and as it rolls down to the rest of the environment, these decisions actually flow into infrastructure components. So at the end of the day, whatever is decided with respect to where the company wants to go has some sort of infrastructure requirement that has to be satisfied to achieve that result. So it is critical, but most of the time forgotten or left for when there's a problem. So
Right.
yes.
So for instance, I mean, if I may jump in, because we do process reengineering and we do software development, and most times we always have to stop the customer and let them know, listen, these things don't just run on their own. There
No.
is an underlying current or underlying infrastructure that they need to sit on. They need to sit somewhere. How do you expect to access these things remotely? We need to factor these things in. In a simple scenario, the work from home type scenario, a lot of customers, thought, okay, great. We could just take the laptops and carry them home and work. No, it doesn't work like that. You must have an infrastructure that supports a work from home culture.
Mhm.
So things like protection with the firewalls and your servers and your switching, even your Wi-Fi networks. And Wi-Fi is another part of the infrastructure that a lot of people ignore. you know
Misunderstood as well.
yeah, and they misunderstand it, according to Sheldon. I'm sure you've had several instances where you walk into environments and you wonder, okay, why is this wireless network this open, or why is it so fragmented? Well, I mean, how would you know help customers in terms of strengthening their Wi-Fi, or even getting a proper infrastructure in place for their wireless network?
No, the thing is, and as you mentioned, when Nadia and yourself came in, you all started to draw reference to what you spoke about before. And contrary to popular belief, guys, infrastructure doesn't just start when you get to that point.
Right.
Scoping or understanding the actual infrastructure is a result of the strategy actually discussed at the high level. So, and you rolling back to the first meeting you guys had, speaking about strategy and so on, that was a very important conversation because
Yeah.
it is at that point the organization, after understanding where they want to go, you could understand where you want to go, not necessarily how to get there, but after you understand where you want to go, then you dig deeper. Okay, how do we get there? Then you start to look further. Okay, what do we need to get there? It is
The
when you get,
vehicle.
yeah, when you need to determine the vehicle, those decisions that were made before actually justify the vehicle that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
So
Agreed.
to
Exactly.
answer your question, Schofield, many people look at it as putting this in place to solve a problem, right? My wireless network isn't working. I need this to fix it. But we need to start having the conversation as you guys are having. You have to look at all of these decisions rooted in the actual strategy of the organization.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think, Sheldon, one of the challenges that we have is that clients look at it in a very siloed approach. To your
Agreed.
point, exactly what you said. This is the immediate problem. I need to fix this immediate problem, but they're
Yeah.
not looking at where it all starts from. Because, okay, you fix that problem, but there may be a ripple effect, a domino effect. So you
Yeah.
really have to take it from a very holistic approach. So when you're finished, you have a complete solution looking at you. And we struggle with that a lot of times. And I guess one of the reasons is the budgetary concern, which we will get to in our
Mhm.
conversation. But that constraint of the budget, this is my problem, I want to solve this. Not recognizing that down the road you may actually end up spending a lot more because you
Mhm.
didn't take that full holistic approach when treating with the issue.
Very much so. Very much so. And just to jump in, Nadia, again, to your point, if we look at it practically, many people see infrastructure as a plaster for a fix, a plaster for a sew, right? And when we get to your budgeting conversation, we'll actually see how putting budget in front actually skews the decisions for infrastructure, right? But just to put a practical example to what Scoofy was talking about, respect to, my Wi-Fi isn't working, let's fix that. Or my network isn't working, let's fix that. That skewed or siloed approach to individual areas of the organization. Let's take, for example, you focus on work from home, guys. I need a work from home solution. I need to have all my users connect securely. But all you consider within that space or that thought space is that, okay, to get that, I need a firewall. All right, I need a firewall to support 50 users. But what happens in the back end? So you decided on a firewall, all right, but you put that firewall in the environment and you don't consider the rest of the organization who needs to actually interact with that firewall. What is that firewall going to sit in front of? And you run into that situation and you create latency or performance issues with the rest of the organization.
Exactly.
So the point I'm making is that you may fix a problem, but because your approach is siloed and not holistic, you may create another problem for the organization.
Exactly.
All
Exactly.
right?
And this is where, again, I want to highlight where the transformational process is. Right?
Agreed.
It's not just digitizing, it's transformational. And what we're speaking on here is where we scope in the organizational needs, where we're looking at everything that is required, including infrastructure. So yes, we understand the future state. Yes, we understand the strategy, but we also need to know what and how to scope the organizational infrastructural needs. Because as Sheldon just indicated, work from home doesn't necessarily just mean you need a firewall. Because what workers will start to say is, well, the laptop is slow.
Yeah.
But that is not the root cause of your problem. The throughput in the back end isn't there to support 30, 50, 60 users working remotely. So you have a mismatch in terms of the equipment, that you've chosen, for your future state needs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important that, we look at everything that we're doing holistically, not just as, what we are going to digitize our business, because if you're going to digitize your business, you're going to have things that we just spoke about, a siloed approach, where you're going to think the Wi-Fi is broken, all you need is connectivity, to browse the internet. But no, you need your Wi-Fi so that when you're in the factory and you have applications running in the factory that you need to access remotely, you need to be able to utilize your Wi-Fi network to gain access back end, and it needs to be secure, and you need to have throughput on it to be able to get your data. Right? So it's a holistic approach. So we now have to step back, and the first part is actually in designing your network properly. And that is something that everybody or most people tend to ignore. It's like, okay, give me a server, give me a switch, run some cables here for me. We don't care the quality of the server cables we buy.
A blanketed approach.
Yeah, give me the cheapest Wi-Fi access points you could find, because on a budget. But then when you put all that together and you're not getting your desired output, you then either will blame the technology person or you're going to blame some other aspect. But it wasn't part of the strategic plan. So that's why we need to bring, IT into the conversation, when we design a strategy, when we're doing the planning phases. And sometimes you may have to scope things down to departmental needs, because a department may need specific infrastructure to function depending on what type of department it is. So say, for instance, you have an admin department and you have a manufacturing. Manufacturing may need a different type of infrastructure, because you have equipment that's giving off high RF frequencies in the plant, and you cannot just use regular cable for that, because then your performance is going to be different. So that's where the planning phase will come in. And I'm sure you've encountered that, Sheldon.
But before you answer, Sheldon, I just want to ask one question. Coming off of what Schofield is saying, do we take a top-down approach where you look at the organization from a holistic level and then departmental, or do you go bottom-up, departmental, and then you go all the way up? What is the process? What is the thinking?
Nadia, that's exactly where I was going. Just that's exactly what I was going. Wonderful question. Great timing. Schofield, Nadia, the challenge we have seen is that many organizations, they take, I don't want to use the word siloed again, but they take a focused approach.
Tunnel vision, yes.
Tunnel vision, right? This time focused, not necessarily in a good way. Anytime you actually scope in infrastructure, research has shown that it makes more sense financially as well, and not to mention it increases the success of the project when you start with the organization in mind. Because though infrastructure may be for a particular department, at the end of the day, that department doesn't apply to a department alone. That department applies to an organizational structure. So
Agreed.
a network of any infrastructure component is something that if it breaks, it could affect multiple areas of the organization. So we continue to ask the question, if you understand the impact can be organizational wide, why is your approach to putting that infrastructure in place departmental or siloed? So
Gotcha.
the recommendation is always to start at the top. What do we want? And you guys are having this conversation already. It's not necessarily technical conversations, guys. The organization, the design of any network starts with business requirements.
Mhm.
Those business requirements are in plain old English. Let the engineers and the technical people worry about all the fancy acronyms and all the devices to support that. But before you do anything, what do you need from an organizational perspective? When you get what you want to achieve, you build that strategy. Then you can start to drill
Yes.
down to it. What is my department? What does this department need to support that goal?
And
And
taking us right back to strategy, the strategic
yes,
Correct.
phase, looking at the
and
targeted state.
Yeah.
just take for example, and simple example, guys. You need, as a financial institution, to have a customer service experience where every customer that comes in front of me spends no more than 2 minutes. Business goal. We have not spoken about technology yet, guys.
Exactly.
Agreed.
2 minutes maximum time customer interaction with the teller. Let's say in a transactional type situation. What okay, so when you define that, then your business understands that guys, we're shooting for 2 minutes.
Yes.
Then when you get down to the customer service department and you start to dig deep, how many transactions do we really need to finish this interaction? All right, we have to find the technology to get us in that 2 minutes. When you build the processes and so on, you know, and you come out with the actual business requirements to support that goal, then you start to dig deep. Okay, what technology do you need? But if you understand, if we had started with, I just want a short wait time, customer service, I want this area
Yeah.
with a short wait time, and not the strategy that says everybody who interacts with my frontline has to be there no more than 2 minutes. It's a different level of thinking. We have not started to speak about bits and bytes or firewalls and routers and switches yet. And we always think that we need to. We don't need to get technical. We just need to
Yeah.
understand what the business wants first.
Yeah. And I'm actually happy that you said that, because that generally is not the conversation that's had, and the
Yeah.
reason for that is budgets. We always blame budgets, but how would you um, comfort a customer who say, "Listen, I hear you, Sheldon. I understand what you're saying, but we have limited budgets." How would you instruct a customer like that?
And you're talking about a daily experience, right? A daily occurrence. That's fine. The thing is, what we do not compromise on, Nadia and Schofield, we try not to compromise on having the customer get to us exactly what they want. Sometimes a customer will come to us and we've been buffed in the Trinidad term for this approach already. Sheldon, I want a firewall. I could sell you a firewall, Schofield. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, but will it solve your problem? That's the issue. Because if it doesn't solve your problem, you come back
Blame
to
you.
me. I provided the wrong,
Yes.
right? So we have stopped that. So to get back to your question now, don't compromise with the customer actually understanding what they want. If you can't tell me what you want, I will say respectfully, Mr. Customer, let's work this out together. Because if you can't tell me what you want, you're minimizing your chances of success.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
some customers run away. Well, you know what? This person could give me what I want. But you have not described to me what you want. And budgets come into play now. So coming back to your answer, we tend to make sure, Mr. Customer, Miss Customer, let's discuss what your needs are.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
bring budget on the table yet. You could have a budget. I can't stop an organization from having a budget for a project behind closed doors. But when you come to us as a vendor, and the first thing you drop on the table, I have a budget of $20,000. You've already started to skew the process because
Correct.
it doesn't
Agreed.
matter what I put on the table for you. If it's over $20,000, you consider it expensive. So
Yeah.
we've started to evaluate based on price, not what is going to solve your problem. And
Yeah.
we all need to stop that. So what do we
Yeah.
do to comfort the customer? We go right back to Mr. Customer. This is not going to solve your problem. So if you are saying that $20,000 is your budget, but to solve your problem it's going to cost 40. So if you are saying you cannot spend 40, then let's go back to your business requirements and define what you really need to be more realistic.
Yes.
But no, we have to stop promising the customer this will work, right?
But Sheldon, what I have found, sometimes they for themselves are not sure what they need.
Agreed.
And I have found that to your point, you have to sit and you now have to come up with a lot of exploratory questions.
To do the
And
work,
in asking these questions, they have the information, but it's locked in their minds. And in you asking these questions, you begin to bit by bit really discern, oh, this is what you're asking me for. Because sometimes even what they come to me and they say, this is what I need, at the end of the day, it's not really what they need, it's what they think they need. And then when you say, exactly. And then when you present some, that, but again, that comes from us, I guess, knowing our craft, taking the time to do that level of due diligence with the customer and realizing what you're talking about and what you're asking me for is not in alignment.
No.
And again, to answer that conversation, so in interactions with customers, they will come to us and say, listen, we need this particular solution. And we would say, okay, what is the objective? And they were like, what do you mean, what's the objective? We need you to deploy X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And I would say to them, well, why didn't you involve us in the strategic phase and in the planning phase? What IT had to do with that? We just telling you what it is we want you all to execute. But what they need to understand now, and what I'm hoping that business owners understand, that IT plays an integral role in your entire organization, because IT can provide the competitive advantage. So we need to be part of the strategic phase, the planning phase, and also here in the scoping and the budgeting phase. And then the subsequent phase coming, IT is throughout your company. But because, how our businesses in Trinidad transitioned is that, you have an IT guy in the corner there for when the printer stops getting trouble, you call him to change the toner or whatever. That's what it has been. And the focus was more email and internet access, but it's no longer that.
No.
The technology provides the innovation and the competitive advantage.
But I want to say, I just want to say something. That comes back to how does the organization look at technology? Forget IT for now.
Yes.
We tend to we define what our ideal customers, who our ideal customers are based on one important criteria. We have a few criteria, but one important criteria is how they view technology. Many times, if you do have an organization that has representation for technology at the executive level, technology is just seen as an enabler, not as a strategic complement to the rest of the actual organization.
And that is a hard sell.
Yeah, I agree. And hence the reason there are some companies will never see eye to eye with how we do things because there's no representation. So they look at it as a piecemeal approach. So they need to start changing that conversation, especially with what we are talking about, guys. Transformation is strategy, transformation, but operational alone.
Correct.
Guys, we have an excellent 1 second, Schofield. We can just stick a pen. We have a question coming in that kind of connects to what we're talking about. Is there separate parts that contributes to the IT budget? And should this be budgeted for every year for every type of business?
But normally what I would do is every customer that we work with, I recommend that they need to allocate an IT budget. Because just like every other department that have a budget, IT also have their own requirements, and you need to have a budget for IT. If you don't have a budget for IT, IT is not part of your strategic objectives at all, for your company. It's a lack of a better word, a bastard child, in the corner. You need to allocate money for IT, to be able to scope, plan, budget, and everything properly.
I want to add to that, Schofield, that we also need to understand that in every organization, whether you have an IT budget, an operational budget, health and safety budget, all these budgets apply to the overall strategy of the organization. So they may come to you for Schofield, okay, based on last year and all the things we put in place, what do you think we need to spend money on this year? Recurring services, etc., etc. We need new this. That is to influence the overall budget for the organization. So when we say IT budget, it is still a company budget, but for financial reasons, it has to be separated for spend. But
Yes.
you need to stop looking at the IT budget at the budget for them fellas in the corner. It's still part of a strategic approach.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, haven't you seen organizations with a structure with no IT in it? You see every other department represented, and you're like, okay, so where's the budget coming from? Oh, well, but probably some from finance, and we'll take some from legal, and that is not.
Oh, they have a miscellaneous line item.
Yeah.
And it goes back
stationery have a budget.
Yeah. You're right. We've seen it like that.
But so all of this planning. Now, first of all, I just want to recap a bit. Is that what we're saying is that the infrastructure needs to happen in the strategic phase. That planning needs to happen there. It needs to align with your company goals and your future state. Then once we have that, then we can then properly plan how we actually going to scope out this infrastructure. And then once we have that scoped and we understand, okay, how it's going to play a role in the organization in terms of enabling creating the competitive advantage, the value proposition, and all those sort of things, then now we can come and easily be able to budget because we know what type of equipment we need to get and we know what infrastructure we need to get because we already did the homework in the first two phases. Exactly. We can't come at the third phase to tell me scope a budget for IT when we have no idea what the strategy is.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the key takeaway I want us to have today. That IT or some representation for IT needs to be in the strategic phase and included strategic planning and then the scoping and budgeting. And as we wrap today, I want us to also understand that IT traverses the entire organization. It's not like how it used to be before, because if we look at next week's session is going to be DX tools, and the DX tools are digital transformational tools, which is going to run the infrastructure that we just spoke about today.
Exactly.
Right? So, and I want you to understand the linkages between everything, right? And next week we're gonna have our chief developer. He's gonna come on and he's gonna show us, one tool and how we can impact the organization, how we can create change, that innovation, efficiency. He's gonna be able to show you that next week. So next week's gonna be pretty exciting. It may not be conversational. It's gonna be, more a demonstrative kind of thing. More visual.
Yes.
So I want you all to keep everything in mind and understand the linkages. If you're having challenges with anything that we're saying, feel free to reach out to us at info@800-tech.com. We work closely together with Blue Networks to make sure that the infrastructure that we put down or that they put down for us is sound, because we collaborate with Blue Networks. So feel free also to reach out to Blue Networks. And I know, Sheldon, that you have an expo coming up on the 25th of this month. I don't know if you want to give the viewers a little info on it.
So we have a virtual event coming up on June 25th from 9 to 12. And again, similar to the Schofield, it's focused on digital transformation, but more so the infrastructure components that are required for digital transformation. So we understand the strategy, but we're going to dig deep now and bring to you actual, not just examples, but actual, equipment demonstrating what is needed for different parts of the organization to actually support the overall transformation strategy within the company itself. So we're going to have speakers from Fortinet, Metrotel, Comscope Wireless, and you guys are part of the expo as well. 800 Tech Cornerstone University. So we want to create an ecosystem where you can actually come in and not just understand, okay, we all hear about transformation, but what are the components? Let's roll up our sleeves and actually get dirty. Let's see what these components are. All right? So looking forward to seeing them there.
Yeah, I want to highlight. No, we have a
before you
question
close,
coming in.
Sophie, yes, you saw it.
Yeah, I see that question, but what I want to highlight is, while we giving you steps to become globally competitive, collaboration is a key component in being globally competitive. And I want to highlight that because Blue Networks, Genesis, that we had in the first segment with Makeda, all these companies come together. We are now creating an ecosystem of on ourselves to be able to compete globally, to present an entire solution, globally, so that we can compete. Because we can compete individually, yes, but we are stronger together.
Agreed.
So we collaborate a lot with Blue Networks. We're going to be doing a lot with Makeda and Genesis. And the other companies that are going to be coming on next week is going to be Red Tent and Natology. We are all going to be having a whole conglomerate of all these organizations together that we're going to be competing with. What was the question, Nadia?
Are consultations with 800 Tech free?
Well, consultations are free to a certain extent. What we do is we offer some measure free consultation. And we also do something what we call a proof of concept. So if you need some more information on how you can access that, please feel free to reach out to us at info@800-tech.com, and we'll be happy to go in a little further with you. All right. So guys, thank you very much for joining, and see you next week, same time at 2 p.m. on all our social media platforms. Thank you very much, Sheldon.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thanks, Nadia. Schofield.
Thanks, Sheldon. Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye, guys.